Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of a sister from another mother. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
My name is Catherine Hoath. I live in Percy, Pennsylvania in the United States. I am 54 years old, and I would be happy to share my story with you. So when I was a child, I remember seeing videos on TV of a famine that was going on in Ethiopia. And it was a Save the Children ad that I was watching, and they were encouraging people to call in and make donations to support children who were suffering at the time. And I really wanted to do it, but couldn't figure out a way. And so, since then, I started to figure out what I could do to help people in my own communities. And so I did a lot of things locally, whatever children could do. I got involved in school activities, and after that moved into helping with homelessness or soup kitchens and any other donation activities when people needed clothing or anything like that. But I did that for many years. I also fostered animals and just tried to say yes anytime somebody asked for help. But it wasn't having as much of an impact as I wanted it to. And as I got older, I kept looking for more ways to have meaningful impact on the world and people's lives. And so I was working as a regulatory scientist at a major pharmaceutical company, and I started reading books about other countries and where needs were greatest in the world. And so one of the books I read was Half the Sky, and it was about women just who are undervalued in many countries in the world. And so women were not able to go to school, so then they didn't work, and so they couldn't really contribute to the family in some ways that could be really meaningful. They were really used as laborers. And at the time, I had two daughters of my own. And in reading this book, I recognized that my two daughters, one who was at the age of marriage, according to the book, maybe certainly maybe 15 at the time, or maybe a little bit younger, I realized she'd be married with children, and her opportunities to choose a job for herself would be limited. And so after that, I read another book, 3 Cups of Tea, just talking about how one man was mountain climbing and, really found himself in a remote village. And this was in Afghanistan. And Pakistan that he was climbing, and he just recognized the real need for education there, and certainly for girls who were not allowed to go to school there. And at the time, I was really distressed by just the wars in the world and really terrorism. And I felt like the only solution to terrorism really is education. And so I tried reaching out to Central Asia Institute. I wanted to see what I could do to maybe help build a school or something like that, but I didn't get a good response, and I wasn't able to pursue that opportunity. And so I really just kept floundering, looking for this thing I felt like I needed to be doing and hoping that I would recognize it when I found it. So in 2019, I was working with a colleague in Ethiopia on the development of a vaccine for the Ebola virus. And so we were coming together with the World Health Organization and AVRF, the African Vaccine Regulatory Forum, and many of the representatives from regulatory authorities in Africa to figure out how we could get a vaccine that our company was developing to people as quickly as possible. And so there's a whole registration process that's required there. But being in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, this was the place where I had wanted to help so much when I was a child, was really just pivotal, just recognizing being there and working with a colleague from Burkina Faso. We had been talking for a few years. I had asked him several years previously what I could do to help the people in Burkina Faso. I was aware enough to recognize that it was one of the poorest countries in the world. Surely this drive I had to bring education to girls especially could be met by working with him. And so he didn't take me seriously when I initially talked to him about it. But during that conversation in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, he started to take me a little bit more seriously. In his mind, having come from a very remote, poor village in Burkina Faso, he couldn't imagine that somebody, honestly, he calls me the rich white woman from, the United States who had all of their needs met, would really want to help somebody coming from another country. And so he started to take me seriously there. And he had been supporting 20 children at the time, a lot of nieces and nephews or people who contacted him to ask for help with education. And so he would do things like pay for tuition and books and bikes and computers if needed, and try to send those children to school for as long as they could possibly go. And so I talked to him about what we might be able to do if we were to expand the efforts, and explained, my desire to support education. I had also been supporting an organization called Water for South Sudan, based on another book that I had read, and they were drilling wells just to provide access to water. I was supporting other efforts through Kiva. It's just an international microfinance lending organization. I was really focused on a lot of projects related to water, recognizing that water was really important. So, we were talking about education, water. I work as, in an international regulatory group. My job is to make vaccines accessible to people in lower and middle income countries. And so, certainly healthcare was really important to me. And so then in that meeting, as we are trying to solve the problem of access to the Ebola vaccine, we really created a plan. So that was in February of 2019. By May of 2019, we started a nonprofit organization called Concorona Alliance Foundation, or CAFO. And so Concorona is the village that my colleague is from. And so he had thought about whether or not he could expand efforts previously, but just didn't know what the process was for starting a nonprofit organization or getting that up and running. And so together we started this organization. And we built new classrooms where there was a primary school now in the village that he came from. There had not been when he was younger, but now there was a primary school. There were 90 students per class. They were multi-grade classrooms. And so the first and second would be in one class, third and fourth in another, and fifth and sixth in another. And so we wanted to split the classes out. And so now we built new classrooms. So now there are about 45 students in each class with a single teacher in each class. Before, there was one book that might be shared among 4 or 5 students. Now we wanted to make sure that all of the students had books, things like paper, writing materials, chalk. We wanted to provide all of those things so people had what they needed. And so we paid for tutoring after school. And in the first year, 20 students passed into middle school. Previously, it was only 1 or 2 per year. So the first year, there were 20 students that passed. The next year, 33. The third year, 30. We'll see how we do from here on in. But we've good. We're very optimistic that the numbers of students that pass into middle school will continue to grow. Now, there is no middle school in Concorona, so children have to ride their bikes about 2 hours to get to the nearest village where there is a middle school. So in 2023, our plans are to go ahead and build a middle school there. In the meantime, we wanted to provide healthcare. And so my colleague is a physician. It took a lot for him to make it through education. He left home at 6 years old and went to another village to go to school. He was homeless and really just kind of rejected, neglected. He had a really difficult time. It was just so hard for him to make it through, but he did finally make it through school and become a physician. So it was very important to him to go back to Concorona and bring healthcare. And so he had 13 siblings. 7 of them had died by this point. And so he wanted to, and many of them, 6 of them had died before the age of 5. And so there's so much death among children. He wanted to prevent that from happening in the future. And so healthcare was really important to him. So we decided to go ahead and build a health center. I guess I had joined the Rotary Club. Somebody recommended that I join Rotary because Rotary International is so committed to many of the causes that were important to us: education, water and sanitation, healthcare. And so I joined Rotary International. I saw a really great project there about somebody providing or building a health center in Sierra Leone, which is so close to Burkina Faso with very similar climatic conditions. And so there I saw that they were able to install a water tower and have running water in the health center. So we decided to go ahead and put running water in the health center. And once we put the tower in, then we were able to provide running water throughout the village. And so we installed several fountains throughout the village. When we built the health center and also, after we built these classrooms for the primary school, the community came to us and said, we really need housing for teachers. And so then we built houses for teachers. And when we built the houses for teachers, we did go ahead and build latrines. And so then latrines became a part of every project. And so then when we built the health center, we built latrines for the general health center. But again, we built housing for healthcare workers and built latrines as part of those. And so then in such a quick period of time, we had some problems with education solved, water and sanitation. We were starting to solve those problems, and healthcare. And so that was great. And so, and then where we are now is we were finishing the health center, and we wanted to go ahead and make sure that for all of the people who had graduated or gotten out of elementary school and were unable to continue their education, they'd also be able to learn, even if they were not going to school formally. Many of the men went directly into subsistence farming. The girls really were married off. Generally, their fathers arrange a marriage for them. Very often it's to a much older man, because so many women die in childbirth that there's a kind of a shortage of women. And so we did go ahead and build a library. And then we've been really worried about the environment. A lot of the trees have been cut down to be burned, and we do need to fix the problem of burning trees. But I also wanted to make sure that we planted some new ones, and so to prevent kind of desertification from really taking over the whole area, and also provide a source for food. And it's going to take several years, I think, for the trees to grow before they can become a source for food. But I wanted to go ahead and get that started. So we are doing everything we can, and it's not us enforcing our will on this village that we're working with. When we started our efforts, one of the first things we did, and this was at the recommendation of a woman there, which was absolutely brilliant, was we worked with the community to start their own nonprofit organization. And so it's called Mami Sierra Na, which means we want peace and prosperity. And so it's in the local Bobo language, which is spoken in Burkina Faso. And so the community decides what they want next. And so all of these projects that I've just been telling you about are really driven by the community. There are over 400 members of this community association. And so anytime we make a change, we are in constant communication with them to figure out how it's being received by the community, what else they would like to do, what they might need to change in order for it to be better accepted or successful. And so we get that feedback. And so right now, what they are asking for the most is this middle school. And one of the reasons it's so important, so if you follow the news at all, there's about Burkina Faso, there is a lot of jihadist activity. So terrorists come in from outside of the country. They may get recruits inside the country, but they are killing people. And often they will come in over the borders, kill people in some of the border towns, and then run back out again. And so there are about 2 million displaced people right now in Burkina Faso because they're pulling out of the villages that are along the borders and just trying to find places within the country. And so if you remember at the start of my journey, one of the things that I had wanted to do was really see what we could do to promote peace through education, and really looking at Afghanistan and Pakistan, and recognizing that, a lot of the terrorism that we were hearing about there, I felt like, maybe education was the best way to solve that. And so turning it back to Burkina Faso, my hope is that by starting with really strengthening just one community in more of a central location in Burkina Faso, by giving them an education, healthcare, water and sanitation, economic development opportunities, and protecting the environment, we'll be able to kind of use that as a center for peace and prosperity, as their local association, name predicts, for everyone, and then spread that out.
Wow. Catherine, I don't have the words. Your work is just absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's definitely a work in progress, but it is my life's passion for sure. I love using what I have, the love I have for my daughters really started all of it, and I want to share that with as many people as possible.
Now, before we started, I asked you to give me a title of your book. If you were to write a book, tell me the meaning of the title and why you chose it, because your formative life is probably what led you to be the person that you are. Let's go back to that story for a minute.
Yeah, so really the title that I would propose would be filling in the holes, maybe an adoptee's journey toward finding meaning and purpose. And so the holes in my life really started just as at birth. I was born in a home for unwed mothers and given up for adoption. And it just began a journey of trying to figure out my identity, what I was here for, whether I had some greater purpose. And so that just really started everything. And so being born that way and kind of feeling unwanted and unloved made me feel some kind of connection with people in other situations in life. I mean, I think that's where fostering, animals came from. As a child, the thing I could do was take in, stray cats and dogs in the neighborhood or birds that had been caught by the cats or something like that. And so that began my, nurturing. But then somehow that also, as I became older and was more aware of everything else going on in the world, then I translated more into how can I care for kind of the neglected people in the world and really bring greater equity there.
Wow. Now, the Her Story Circle is a movement of women who want to leave the planet a better place than we found it. Why do you think the sharing of our stories is so impactful? If there was somebody who's listening to you talking about how you've done all of these amazing things your whole life, why is it important for us to share these stories?
I am just an average person. I am a mom and I have lots of flaws and I am just doing the best I can. And I really believe that if we all find our passions for helping others, then we can all do our part. And so my hope is that people can recognize that this mom from Pennsylvania in the United States, can do it, then maybe they can do it too.
So our stories are really a source of inspiration for others to find a blueprint to follow, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what changed your life when someone gave to you? For example, your adoptive parents. What changed the trajectory of your life by being gifted and being taken into this family? Let's just talk about the power of giving.
Right. That's a good question. And so I guess I recognized that I had a chance, right? And so I remember my mother explaining adoption to me as being, children being chosen. And, in my image of, pet saving or whatever, I had this image of children lined up in cages and somebody comes and chooses you. And so that gift of being chosen from this cage I envisioned when I was 3 was then you then get to make your life. You can create something outside of the boundaries that you were born into. And so I was given that and all of the opportunities that I would like to create for people now around the world were given to me. I did have access to education and water and a home. And so I want everybody to have that.
That's amazing. Now, giving sometimes is more for the giver than for the person receiving the gift. I know that's the case for me. I believe that it's almost like a drug. The more you give, the more you want to give. It's almost like you're giving to yourself. My grandmother used to say that this universe is like a giant bank and that you have to keep depositing good deeds and they come back tenfold in very unexpected ways and never from the people that you serve, not from the people you give to, but in magical ways. And So my life has been spirit led in that sense. I've had some amazing things happen to me. Why is giving so important for the future of humanity, do you think?
It is the only way, right? And so it is the only way that we can survive. There are so many sad stories in the news about what is happening in the world, and there are a lot of conflicts, and but we can choose another way. And I really think the only way to live and survive and really thrive, the world has way more resources than we all need, but so many of the resources are being used by so few people, and we just need to share. And so it's there. We just need to make it happen. So
So, if there was somebody who's listening to us right now and is inspired by your story and they want to help your organization, what is the best way for them to help you? How can they reach you?
yeah, so we do have a website. It's scrolling on the bottom. I think so much of the work that we're doing right now is to support children. I think what would be most helpful would be to go ahead and sponsor a child. We do have children on our website. We are currently supporting about 400 children, and we are committed to sending them through primary school, middle school, high school, technical school, and we'll see what happens about universities. But I think just sponsoring a child would be most helpful. You can go ahead and email me at info@concorona.org, and I will respond to that request. Thank you.
And let's put it into context when you say sponsor a child. For people in Western countries, they have no idea, what amount of money we're talking about. I know for me in Zimbabwe, it cost $5 for 3 months of education. So $15 a month can send a child to school. What is it like for you in Burkina Faso?
Right. So we've been asking for $40 a month, and that is to pay for tuitions and books. We give children bikes once they have to go to another village, and we keep
Yes.
those up. And then we also are using some of the money to support some of these new schools that we're building. And so we want to build a middle school, a technical school, and a high school right in Concrona. So that's what we are using the money for.
Fantastic. Now, my last question is going to sound a little bit strange, but I'm going to have a little thought experiment with you and take you into the future. You are now 100 years old. You're sitting on your porch, surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, all of those rescue dogs and cats. If you could teleport into the future and have a conversation with the older you, this wise woman who's led you to that point, what would you say to her based on how you're living your life right now?
I would want to know the stories, right? And so right now, this is a big experiment. We are investing in the children of the world, in Burkina Faso. And so when I'm 100, then I want to be sitting on the porch and understanding what happened to all these children, right? My hope is that they will go off and go to school, become educated, and spread peace and prosperity throughout the country and to other countries in the world. And I guess I want to know, that's something I believe will happen, but I'd really want to see whether that experiment worked. Does investing in children this way lead to a better world?
I love that. They say that when you plant the seed of a tree, you never live long enough to sit under the shade of that tree. So, what you're really doing is planting the seeds for the future Africa. And we will not live long enough to see that happen, but we know what's going to happen. Change is coming. So, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today. I'm really excited to have found you. I was bouncing off the walls when you responded to do this interview. And we would love to see how we can support you in all of your work. Spread the work that you're doing. I'm also a Rotarian. I'm actually the Rotary president for Southwest USA. So when I lived in Albuquerque, I was in a Rotary club. And because of COVID, they put it online. So we've been attending meetings online. So I am the president elect from the 1st of January. I'm the president of a Rotary club in the US. So we have a lot in common, Catherine, just so many common threads. I feel so blessed to have met you today. Thank you.
Thank you. It is quite an honor to be here with you. I really appreciate all of your questions and your stories, and I can't wait to learn more about other women's stories.
Fantastic. So don't go away. Let me thank everybody for showing up today. The Her Story Circle is connecting with some phenomenal women, real change makers, thought leaders, women who want to leave this planet a better place than we found it. So come back again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing person. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Catherine, thank you again for the interview.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her